a few minutes later, I feel my aunt kind of just put her hand on top of my hand. And so I look over, and my aunt is left. She's not there. But I can feel a hand on top of my hand. About 30 seconds later, the doctor comes in, and he pulls me out into the hallway and says, she died about 30 seconds ago or a minute ago.
All right, welcome back to Case Studies. I'm here with my friend Jon Adams. So we met originally through your little brothers. Originally, it was Davey, I think was the first one that connected us. Was it Davey or James?
Well, neither connected us, but James and you were working together before you and Davey.
I mean, James was like literally... You meet those kids, like, I just worked with so many young, amazing people.
Yeah.
And then within that bucket, there's like more amazing people. And he was just from day one, he was so humble, so driven, kind of so eager to grow.
Yep.
And so we just connected really well. And then when Davey came on board, I mean, Davey was like that times 5.
Yeah.
Like he was just a sponge.
Yep. He's coachable.
And
can be,
so
right?
coachable, like, to this day, one of my favorite guys I ever worked with. But they always talked about their big brother, Jon. And, so that was kind of that was the early intro, was years before we ever met.
Right. But they never brought us together, and I always kind of thought it odd because they'd talk to you about me, and then they'd talk to me about you all the time. If they were doing any big decisions, they'd obviously, as an older brother, come for advice, and it was always, well, in case he thinks this, right?
Yep.
And so I really appreciate you mentored them for 15, 16 years before you and I ever met.
Yep.
We met independently. If you could recall, we went on a golf trip, and we both happened to be on that golf trip.
That was one where we donated the plane, and you guys bought the trip, right?
Yeah, my friend bought the trip, and we ended up together. So
it was so fun.
Yeah, it was great. And as soon as you put together James and Davey, then it was just like fast friends at that point.
Yeah. So a little bit about Jon. Jon works for kind of one of the big, financial firms, has over $1 billion of AUM, kind of wealth management, done it. So go back to kind of how you got into that space, because this is a real fun story for me as far as like just getting gritty and scrappy and just going and creating something out of nothing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it might go back before that a little bit, if you don't mind. I'd say I grew up in my grandpa's truck, just like James and Davey did. We grew up on his 100-acre farm, ran a sod farm from my dad, and we learned through his entrepreneur type life how to just figure things out, right? We were always on the daily working for him and my dad, and he taught us just how to be as a human being first, and then how to get yourself into business situations and make it happen, right? And so for me, I actually got hired on and was working as going to school, working as an associate while I was going to school, and just trying to kind of get educated. And an interesting thing happened where a gentleman came in my cubicle. So I'm working, kind of like an aggrandized secretary, to tell you the truth. At the time, I'm in college and just tried to get a job, so it was more like an internship, a little bit bigger than internship. And a gentleman walked in and said, "Hey, do you have any investors here that want to buy some land in Layton?" And that's where my grandpa's farm is. And I said, "Maybe. What's the price? What do you got?" And he had 11 or 12 acres in Layton. And so he gave me the price, and it was super mispriced based on what my grandpa's farm. My grandpa was selling lots, and he was sold some acreage there recently. And so I had a brother-in-law that was working with me at the time, and his dad was the branch manager of the firm. So we went to him and said, "Hey, I didn't have any money. I'm, poor college kid. I'm living in a duplex that I owned. So I was, figuring out how to own a house and make a little money off the renters." And he gave us $10,000 to go get it under contract. And I won't take through the whole details of that, but 6 or 8 months later, we sold the thing and made, I don't remember if it was $400,000 or $500,000. And from that, I got paid less of the deal.
That was your first kind of like entrepreneurial taste.
Yes,
of like,
exactly.
I see value.
Mm-hmm.
I see it like the
Harvard,
Harvard's definition of entrepreneurship. And the first time I heard this, I was like, this makes so much sense. Because I'd hear this story of like, you're an entrepreneur, and I'd go straight to like, oh, you started a business and you founded a business and you built it. But like Harvard's definition of entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity without regard of resources currently controlled.
Okay.
So you see something that you want, you don't have the resources to get it. And that entrepreneurial gap, that is what being an entrepreneur is. And what you're describing is that it's, my grandpa had some land. I know it's worth this. This guy says it's worth this. I don't have the money.
Yep.
I don't have the skills.
Exactly.
I don't have the relationships.
Yeah, seriously.
But I can see the opportunity.
Correct.
And then you get the money or you get the relationships, and that's what being an entrepreneur is. And so it's fun to kind of hear like those first entrepreneurial stories or experiences.
And even in the deal, I didn't run the whole deal. There were realtors, real estate gentlemen, part of the deal. My brother-in-law was part of the deal. So a bunch of things happened. But at the end of the deal, here I am. I'm probably 22 at the time.
Yeah.
And the way the path normally works is you finish school, it takes you, I was probably on a 10-year track to become partner, right?
Yep.
Well, with that deal where the branch manager, who later became my partner, all of a sudden he made a grundle of money from this thing that all he did was give us $10,000. That kind of just opened the door to become an advisor.
Yeah.
And so from there, I actually went and started studying for the Series 7, Series 66, and got fully licensed to become an advisor.
Yep.
Went to the American College for Financial Planning to get a designation through them. And now all of a sudden I was, 16 months later, I'm a financial advisor and a very, very small piece of this gentleman's book, like 2%, right? I mean, I'm making nothing.
He allocated it just because.
Just because.
Just to
kind of saying, hey, this somehow we created this value and he made a bunch of money from his $10,000 investment. And so I think I skipped 6 or 8, 9 years of probably painful, sweat equity in the business. And so got just a teeny little piece of the business. And then one of the partners was making a lot of money in real estate. So he left. And so I purchased his piece, but guess what? I didn't have the money for that. And so I financed that.
Wow.
At the time, I'll just tell you, I was making $36,000 a year in salary. And we had this particular team had floor seats at the Jazz where we'd go and we'd try to entertain people and get to know people. Well, I was 2, maybe 3 or 4% of the business at that point, but of the 3 partners, we divvied up the business expenses 3 ways.
Oh, geez. So you're carrying a heavy.
I spent 60% of my salary in Jazz tickets that year.
How does that work? It's not a very good deal.
Not a very good deal, but I saw the potential on the wall that says, okay, if I can get myself in here and just keep getting more and more equity in the deal, however I can do that, let's go for it. So
it's just kind of like getting in the game.
Getting your foot in the door. And then, if I brought in business, then that equated for another % of the business. So it was like, okay, I'll put the money, put the money out there.
I'll invest.
Yep. And I was living in that duplex. The duplex, I believe we were $912 a month. I charged upstairs $750 plus utilities. So I was, $100 a month in living expenses. So my wife was working at the time and she was maybe bringing in $15,000 a year. So we just lived super frugally.
So lean.
Really lean. And then I'd call presidents of companies, owners of companies and say, hey, no strings attached, but I'm just trying to get to know people. I'd love to take you to these floor seats and dinner at the Jazz game. I promise I'm not gonna hound you after that. And what we do we'd have a photographer take pictures of us in the seats. And then a couple weeks later, I'd deliver those pictures in a frame and just say, hey, thanks for coming to the game. And usually that, spurred another conversation. And sometimes it just didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
But I think we calculated somewhere around 30% of the time, it created a warm lead for ourselves. Where all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, now we know you, you know them.
There's a relationship now.
Correct. Yeah. It's a relationship. And we'd put it into a system where we'd say, okay, well, we're going to start following up on these people. But sales cycle and what we do is a long time, right?
Yeah.
People don't just trust you with,
their money,
high amounts of money, just because you took them to a jazz game. That doesn't make any sense, right?
Yep.
So we tried we didn't tie the two together. It was just, hey, we'd like to meet you. Sales cycle sometimes was 2 years, 3 years. Some people that I met when I was 23, all of a sudden they have an exit when I'm 30. And they call me all of a sudden and say, hey,
I'm ready.
Yep. And now I've created a relationship with them over the years through golf or through what have you. But that was kind of a way to get in the door, right? But yeah, it was, I look back and I don't think I would have the guts to do it again, knowing what I know now. I was just naive enough to know.
You sent it.
Yep,
you just
like, okay.
Yep.
Just we'll figure this out. And I think if I can make this happen, I can make it happen. And and if not, I'll be 25 or 26 starting over. And it is what it is. But
it feels like that entrepreneurial ethos has just always kind of been a part.
Yeah.
Is that like how you were raised?
It was. That's what I mean by growing up in my grandpa's truck. And so did James and so did Davey, right? So you meet the two of them, and we've got another couple of brothers, same thing, that when we were growing up, we'd go out and buy a bunch of bushels of corn, a bunch of boxes of corn, and my grandpa'd put us on the street, and we'd sell the corn and try to make a little spread.
Yeah.
In the 4th grade, I had a candy store at the elementary school on the playground where the principal had to ask me to stop running my candy store. And so what I'd do is I'd bring a big suitcase of my candy store to the school, and then after school I'd run and I'd plant up 2 feet off of school property.
That's amazing.
Right where everyone's going to start walking home. And I ran into somebody, it couldn't have been a couple months ago, that said, hey, I remember buying candy from you on Sunset Drive right after the school, So, but that, that didn't just come from me. That came from my grandpa and my dad and, teaching us principles and then being able to see it. We worked on their sod farm. So you turned 12 and that just meant you started mowing lawn, right? And you turn 13 or 14, you get a little bigger, and now you're rolling sod and you're doing different things. And by the time I was 16, same thing for James and Davey. By the time we're 16, 17, my dad had another gig. So the sod farm was built to teach us how to work. And he'd get some extra income from it. He was there, on Saturdays, running the show on Saturdays, but
it was a side hustle for him.
Monday through Friday during the summer, I mean, we were taking the cash. We were, cutting the sod, loading it into people's trucks. How incredible
is that? Like it truly, like, you think about like education, like that's education.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And
that's where you learn about like customer service and
100%. And we, so we'd see how our dad would treat a customer on Saturday. Right. And then all you have to do is emulate him on Tuesday.
Yep.
Have my football buddies helping me load at that point. And I'd say, okay, well, at 16, 17, I'm sick of doing the hard labor. So I actually start trying to figure out how to get laying jobs. So going door to door, you see somebody that doesn't have a front yard that's got grass in it, I knock on the door and say, hey, we could have this thing sodded tomorrow for, whatever price that I, came up with, and convenience. Sometimes we get people to allow that. If we did that, my dad would give me sod at 15 cents, even though he was selling it at, I think he was selling it probably 22, 23 cents a square foot.
And you could mark it up.
And then I got a little spread because I was selling it. And then I'd pay my football buddies to come and help. And then I charged 10 cents per square foot to lay it.
Yeah.
Right. And so then I had to learn. I'm 16, 17, learning how to kind of figure out spreads.
Mispricing stuff.
Exactly.
Losing money on jobs.
Exactly. Well, and then I go off to go out on a mall on a mission, and I come back, and James, who's Mike and James, who are both younger than me, I come back. I was charging 10 cents a square foot to to lay the sod. Well, I come back and they're charging a lot more than that. I mean, the money that they were making they were killing
off
it.
The same work.
And I think what they were doing is they'd say, well, what do I feel like today? Yeah, we'll lay that for $500, and I'd have laid it for 150, right? Or whatever, right?
For sure.
They all of a sudden started making more money than I ever made doing
it. Learning there's a different willingness to pay.
Exactly. Yeah, the convenience factor, right?
Yeah.
And I think, the world has turned into convenience.
Of course.
There's so much stuff to do that people will pay you for that convenience factor. Yeah. And so I actually think the arbitrage that James and Mike and Davey made on the sod farm was much, much more than I ever made.
Yeah.
And so, we kind of learned growing up. There's a lot of talk about different privilege in the world right now. And I'd say what the privilege I had was being in Beach Adams' truck and being in Steve Adams' sod farm, who happened to be my parents, right?
Yep.
And then from there,
your privilege was you learned how to work.
Yeah, exactly.
And you had great parents and, faith and all kind of the legacy that they left.
100%. Yeah, great. Just wonderful parents.
But the work, I would say the same thing. Like I think back about, my life growing up, and I didn't come from like a wealthy family.
Mm-hmm.
Mom's a nurse, she retired a couple of years ago, but did it for a long
mm-hmm.
time, as long as I can remember. My dad was a real estate agent, they kind of dual income family. We had 7 kids, but they were, incredibly like industrious and
mm-hmm.
entrepreneurial.
Yep.
We always had a garden. We
mm-hmm.
always had, lawns to mow. And I benefited kind of being in the same boat as like a James or a Davey,
mm-hmm.
where I had big brothers.
Yep.
That they got the lawns, there was all the lawns to go mow and different stuff. And so I just kind of stepped into, hey, here's your 5 or 7 lawns that you do these, and it's $50 a lawn.
And then build on top of that.
You get end of the week, $50 a lawn. It was like $350. I'm like, I was the wealthiest kid out of all my friends.
100%.
I always had cash. You know what I mean?
And really, my older brother Steve's the one that started. I just took over for him.
Yeah.
Right? And he and I remember we still laugh about certain jobs that we would do, and we just kind of stand on the shoulders of those that come before, and then see what you can do with it from there.
Yep.
But I think we just learned how to work. We learned how to be charismatic and salesman.
Yeah.
But then truly, I think we learned by watching the family business, we learned how to be honest and trustworthy.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, people ask me now, like, why have you succeeded in the business that you're in? I just feel like people can see the trust that comes with working with, somebody that grew up in a family where the trust and the honesty. And I think that outweighs a lot of things. I think it outweighs, all the spreadsheets. It outperforms the standard deviation, right? Even if you think about when I became an advisor, I remember I got a big deal for my partner at the time. Like I say, I was a very, very small partner, and so he came and was selling the deal, and no joke, and it would have been good for me. It was an $8 or $10 million deal, which I get percentage if we close this deal.
Yep.
And his name was Dwight, and Dwight was one of the just honest, trustworthy, best people you ever come by, and my mentor for sure. And in that meeting, he said, well, you've got this option to 1031 exchange this into these buildings.
Yeah.
I think you should 1031 exchange it into these buildings, and I don't think you should hire us. And I'm sitting at the table, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I brought you these guys to close them.
Yeah.
And he's, so the next day we talked, and I kind of said that to him more nicely than that. But, hey, you didn't even try to sell us in the end. And he said, well, I looked at the deal, and their deal was better. The tax savings plus the rates of return. And then he looked at me.
Why am I trying to even?
Yeah, why would we say we've got something better? And then he taught me that concept, and he said, if you truly tell the truth in all of your, and I'm really 22, 23 at this time, and he said, if you tell the truth and you give up deals because you're really not the solution, that will come back to you tenfold.
Of course, it's like a boomerang.
Yeah,
like it, and all of us know that. Like all of us know.
At 23, I didn't feel like I knew it because I was out. I was saying, out $10 million deal, right?
I'm saying you know it when you've done business with people.
Exactly.
Like all of us, like when I think about like who's my insurance guy, who's my wealth manager, who's my real estate guy, like it's been the same person for 20 years. You know, each one of them. And it's because you trust them. Like that trust currency is so powerful. Yep. You know what I mean?
And really even within the last 12 months, there was a deal quite a bit bigger. I mean, a really big deal where I just did what Dwight did and said, hey, I think this other thing's better. There's just enough tax savings in it that I'm in the hole, you know, I think it was probably 25%. I got to make you 25% to make you whole if you do this other deal. I learned that from Dwight and somebody that taught me.
What a lesson.
Taught me that, you know, that's how you need to be. And somehow my business partners and I run over $1 billion now.
No, I mean, it's why.
Yeah.
Like I would see that all the time with Todd. You know, Todd was, you know, my boss and mentor and, you know, built Deepened. But he just did the right thing every time.
Yep.
Like in the short term, it was at the expense of his company. Yep. But it was never at the expense because you had this reputation. Like I remember, like this was like a real story. We were looking to go at a couple different options, and one of my buddies called me and said, "Hey, I think we should go with Apex." He said, "I have a buddy who worked at both. He didn't get paid there," and he said that this. So it was like one layer removed, and that phone call like changed the course of my life and a lot of people's lives from something that Todd had done 2, 3, 4, 5 years before. And so that those decisions of like doing the right thing, they precede you. You know what I mean? And your reputation precedes you and who you are precedes you.
Right. And I think, you know, if you're brought up in a family of faith and a family of hope and a family of, you know, that kind of a working vision, you don't cut corners. That you get enough small experiences that start to say, okay, if you do it the right way, it works out. And when you try to cut the corners, it doesn't. And so I learned it, like I say, through my family business, and then later on through my business partners, Craig and Dwight. They've taught me so much over the years. Dwight's, we recently, he retired and we bought him out about 5 years ago. So, and then Craig and myself, and we've got another partner that we brought on, Jon, since then. And really just they're the most amazing people. You hear so much about surrounding yourself with the right people. And if you were to do a litmus test or even a personality test of the 3 partners, you'd never think that we would ever be in the same room. We're very different. Very different.
Yeah.
And it works because we're different. Because, you know, Craig's more conservative. Jon's more on the ball. He's more managerial. I want to be out in the community selling. I want to
be
more
entrepreneurial.
Yeah, more entrepreneurial, more
sell side, business development side.
Yep. And if we all did the same thing, it wouldn't work.
Yep. One of them's not needed.
Yep. But again, there's trustworthy as the day is long, and that's what I appreciate.
So great. So exciting. So kind of have like this rich childhood, 2 upbringing, went on a mission.
I did.
So go on a mission. And you, when we were talking before, you had met your wife in high school.
Correct. Yep.
So talk about that. Like, what was first experience of?
Yeah. So first experience, I actually knew her older sisters and her mom before I ever met her.
Okay.
I played guitar. My whole family, we all play guitar, and you know, part of that is just so you can sing around the campfire, and girls like it, right? So you learn how to play as a teenager, and so I played guitar in like for the band, like the show choir. So we'd play the music for the show choir. Yeah, it's decent. And later on, I'll tell you, you know, I still play guitar for some albums and things. But and I actually went on a trip to California with my future mother-in-law before I ever met Janelle. And what happened is she came back from that trip saying things about myself and you know, who I was. So then this Janelle started to say, who's this kid, right? Yeah. So she kind of knew who I was before. And so by the time we met, she knew who I was. I knew who her sisters were, and I knew her mom. And then from there, to tell you the truth, it was just like this instant friendship. And I was telling my kids the other day, it wasn't lovey-dovey. It was just like she became my best friend. We started going to lunch together. We started palling together. There was no I love yous. There was no, it wasn't like a romantic relationship. But we were dating for sure, right? And so I remember my parents were a little bit against single dating, as yours might have been in high school. But Janelle had come over to the house a couple of times, and after about 2 or 3 weeks, my dad hadn't seen her, and he said, "Hey, where's that Janelle Shelby girl? I think you ought to be dating her more." And I said, "Well, I thought I wasn't supposed to single date, Dad." And he said, "Well,
he liked her.
I liked that one."
Yeah.
And so she really became a quick part of the family. I left on my mission. She continued to come over for Sunday dinners and sleepovers with my little brothers, James and Davey and Mike. They'd, make blueberry muffins and have sleepovers, and I'd get letters from them hanging out with Janelle. So Davey, think about this. So you met Davey when he was in his 20s, right? When he was 4, he met Janelle. And so she was like a sister.
She's just been a part of the family.
Been a part of the family from the get-go, yeah.
Were you smitten the whole time, or was it more like friends earlier?
It was just like so easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I say, it wasn't smitten in the sense of head over heels in this romantic smitten. It was just like, wow, I just found my best buddy. Some of my buddies were starting to make choices at the time that I didn't want to make.
Yeah.
And so it was easy to go hang out with her. But yeah, I was just smitten in the sense that I just wanted to be with her at that point. Right. Went on my mission. We wrote through my mission, but told her in the beginning, let's not be one of those couples. Like, just you date, and if I get back and we'll start dating again. And we did, and it just kind of started right back up, and we were married within the year.
Wow. So it was quick.
Yeah.
So you're quick. Literally fresh off the mission.
Yep. 21.
Going to college.
Mm-hmm. Going to college.
Completely broke.
Went and bought a duplex 3 months off my mission.
How crazy is that?
Well, back then, I don't know if you remember, they give, if you could fog a mirror, they'd give you a loan, right?
100%.
So I went down to Barnes Bank, who's out of business, but went down to Barnes Bank and said, "Hey, I'd like to buy this duplex." And they said, "Okay, well, let's look at your credit." And I had one credit card that my limit was $200. I didn't have any credit, right? I do have the name Jon Adams. And the lady behind the desk, I think, knew that. And she just said, "I think I could figure something out." And I don't know what she figured out, but they gave me the loan for a duplex at 23, 3 months off my mission. And so that duplex, I moved into it. Janelle and I got married, moved into the basement part because we could rent the part above for more money. And then, we just made things work. And, I got married, or I got hired for that clerical position about a month after we were married. So I was 21 when I started, and 43 now. So I've been at the same firm ever since. And just
so got married, buy the duplex, kind of start on your career. Obviously, the career, we fast forward till the end. Me and you've had a bunch of different experiences. We're going to go kind of do business development together and, work with clients you work with and stuff like that. But you guys have just built this beautiful business. You built something I know that you're super proud of. And
I've been very fortunate. And again, I mentioned my business partners because, they're just, it took all of us to do it, really. Yeah. The senior partner we just bought out, he started the business in 1982, the year I was born.
Wow,
right?
that's incredible.
So he had part of it built, and then when we got there, we got more creative and kind of were able to build upon it together. So, I'd be remiss to say that I just started this thing from zero, because there's been lots of people.
And the partnership's important. This was the kind of part of the journey that I remember. I knew you, but I didn't know you, and I didn't know the full story. And I think it was when we went to Oakmont. It was either Rock Creek or
Rock
Oakmont.
Creek. Yep, it was Rock Creek.
Where we started getting in and talking about life, and you started kind of opening up about your journey. And so you get married, you guys go have 3 kids, 4 kids.
4 kids.
And you and Janelle had 4.
Correct.
And then at a young age, it was what, 32 or 33?
Yeah, so I was 34 and Janelle was 32. And we, things were, it finally kind of made, kind of got to the point where I wasn't junior partner anymore and things were really
starting to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we kind of suffered through things together for a long time and pinch pennies. And then all of a sudden, it started to go, kind of the flywheel started to really spin. And, that just one day she felt like she had the flu. And so we took her in and they did some blood work. And she had a blood disorder that we didn't know about, right? And so
what was it?
It's called ITP.
Okay.
Most of the time, it's not anything too much to worry about. So from the get-go, they said, "Hey, you'll probably be out of here in a day or two. We'll give her a steroid." And what happens is your spleen starts to think that a certain protein that attaches to you get a virus, right? And so your spleen's killing that virus, and then once the virus is gone, because you have ITP, your platelets now start getting eaten by your spleen.
Wow.
Okay, so we get to the doctor, she has the flu, and they say, "Hey, you have 25,000 platelets. You should have, 300,000 platelets."
Wow.
And what a platelet does is that it coagulates your blood.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So they said, get straight to the ER, but if you get cut between now and then, like, it won't stop bleeding. It'll bleed out. And I thought, whoa, this is, okay. That's
serious. This is a real
pretty
thing.
serious, yeah.
Yeah.
So we got up to the ER and long story short, they did some tests and they said, okay, we got to get these platelets up. But again, they weren't super worried at the time. But her platelets just wouldn't go up. And she started having some stomach pain while we were there. And we were really only at the hospital 8 days. But the diabolical thing that they found out was this pain in her stomach. She ended up throwing some blood clots in her portal vein. And so she had two ends of the spectrum. You have low platelets, which means you can't coagulate, and then clots, which are overcoagulation. And so now you're on this teeter-totter. For blood clots, you give Coumadin. What does that do? Thin the blood. You can't thin blood of somebody that has no platelets.
Yeah.
And so they said, okay, we think we can do different things to get her platelets up, and then from there we'll put her on Coumadin. And they kind of had a game plan. And the first few days, I didn't think it was diabolical. And then, day 4 and 5 come and it's like, okay, this is something's not right here.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden teams of doctors start coming instead of one doctor. And we're getting to know, okay, this is more serious than we knew. And so at the time I'd spend all day at the hospital with my mother-in-law and her, and then I'd go across the street and sleep at the Holiday Inn and come back. Right. And, but it wasn't, they weren't telling us, hey, this is fatal, say your goodbyes or anything like that. They were just, okay, we got to do this. And then we think you'll be out in a couple of days. Right. And so, so the, one night we just say, okay, see, I'm headed up to the Holiday Inn. I left my phone charger in the room. So I went back up and she just looked at me a little bit different, and just said, hey, thanks for always taking care of me.
This is your wife?
This is my wife.
Oh my gosh.
And just a little bit weird, right? Just a little like
too much.
A little like she thinks like something's going on a
yeah.
little bit more, right? So I go, and that whole week I was listening to a certain song going to sleep, and it was giving me, a lot of comfort. And I even wrote a prayer down about that song, like, praying for her. Let's get out of this situation. But it came deeply meaningful while we were in the hospital. Well, that night I ended up getting a call at 3 a.m. and one of the blood clots has moved to her brain. And so by the time I got over there at 3:15 or 3:30, they knew you can't operate because she has too few platelets. You start an operation and she'll 100% bleed out. And so they told me, she probably has about 4 hours to live. And at the time, she'd had, the blood clot, so she couldn't speak. So, we didn't really get that, that goodbye moment. But I was standing there, and I just kind of, in shock, I'm sure. And right here, it was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. Because they were giving me a choice. They said, she got about 4 hours to live, or we can intubate her and get her on oxygen, and we can probably get her to survive the day. And it's just the loudest thing I've ever heard. Just right here said, "Get your kids down here and put the tube in." And I said, "Okay, put the tube in," knowing that it wasn't going to extend her life. It was just,
I literally can't even imagine, like, hey, we're going into the hospital to put the tube in. Like, you're not going into the hospital to not come out with like a 32-year-old
right
spouse. You're going in there to go get some help and then pop back out. Like, it's like,
right. And it was
the surrealness of that has got to just be like, what world am I living in? Like, what is going on?
It's one of those times that things slow down and just, But so they put the tube in, and I, called my business partner. He went and grabbed my kids and brought them down. And, I feel for him. He knows what's happening, and he's got to go pick up my kids and bring them down. Right. Well, the tube ended up making it so that so many people could come down and say goodbye. In fact, James and Davey were down in Texas, I think, with you.
Yeah.
And they were able to catch a flight. They got there about an hour before she passed away. And so she passed away that evening. I can't recall exactly what time, maybe 8:00 at night or so. And, so it's kind of in such a horrible, tragic event, there was a little ray of hope, or maybe a little blessing, that at least people got to come see her, because no one was, we weren't communicating with people that, hey, this is happening. It was that when they got the call that day, it was, hey, we need you to get down to the hospital. Like, she's not going to make it. And and everybody's response was not. We didn't know she was that sick, right? We thought this was something small, right? But her whole family, my whole family, everyone was able to come, kind of say their last goodbyes. And I hesitate to tell the next part of the story, but I think I will. We're sitting there, and my aunt comes over to me and says, "Hey, her son had passed away, and my cousin," and she said, "Hey, I remember Robbie wanted me to hold his hand." So I came over and was just holding her hand. And, a few minutes later, I feel my aunt kind of just put her hand on top of my hand. And so I look over, and my aunt is left. She's not there. But I can feel a hand on top of my hand. About 30 seconds later, the doctor comes in, he pulls me out into the hallway and says, she died about 30 seconds ago, or a minute ago. And I'll tell you, for 34 years of my life, I really believed in God. But I don't think I had any extraordinary experiences. Even as an LDS missionary, you kind of feel some positive things, and you go with that. And there's so much faith in between. Like, okay, this feels good, but I don't think God gives you that many signs.
Yeah.
Along the way, because I think you need you got to figure it out. And there's just these little nuggets that you gotta hold on to.
Yeah.
Well, from that moment on, I just can't believe that I did not feel that hand on top of my hand at the moment she passed away. And so the kind of the confidence of an afterlife for me changed at that moment. You always hope for an afterlife and believe there is, and it's easy to, you're raised that way, right? But that was very different. And you cannot convince me that I did not feel what I felt. And so I probably won't get detailed too much more of the rest of the night, but the next day, I wake up, and life's just kind of been shattered, but I didn't have a feeling of not knowing that there's something else after this because of that feeling that I had. There was a hand on my hand. You cannot tell me otherwise. And so I wasn't struggling with that. I was struggling with so many other things. I was struggling with, I've got 4 young kids. We just baptized Brinley 2 weeks before. The twin boys are 5. And the baby just stopped nursing about a month before. So she's 13, 14 months old. And I've got so many questions about, how am I supposed to do this? Is this just questions were different than about if Janelle was going to still, if she's somewhere alive, right? And so that next morning,
because life goes on. Like, I think that's like the hardest thing is like, you want to mourn,
right?
But you got kids crying, and you got like a house to like,
right?
Like I literally can't even imagine, and like,
and you've got to look them in the eye the next day, and you not only are you now raising them alone, you're their life shattered too, right? And they're asking you questions that you don't have answers for.
Yeah.
But I had a really neat experience that day. I talked to my dad and just told him the 6 or 7 things that were just on my heart that day. And we just, we just kind of hung on through the day. And about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I was actually the elders quorum president at the time. And so I've got responsibilities there. And it was the adult meeting of state conference, and it popped in my head, oh no, state conference is in a couple hours. And I immediately said, I'm not going to that. And again, I don't know why, but right here, right behind my right ear, I don't know why, it was almost as if, it wasn't audible words, but it's almost like a frying pan hit me on the side of the head. Like, you're going to that meeting. I said, okay, whatever. And so I ended up calling the bishop and said, hey, what time's the adult meeting of state conference? And he later told me, he said he was trying to tell me, you don't have to go to that, Jon. What are you talking about? And he said he couldn't get the words out. It was like he was like, he couldn't tell me. And he just said 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, whatever it was. But his first response was,
what are you doing?
Don't go to that.
Yeah,
he himself didn't think I should go to that, but it was like he was struck dumb. He couldn't say it.
Yeah.
He told me what time. And so I told my family, and or at least my parents. I told my parents, and then I told Janelle's family I was going to go to that meeting, and they were like, okay. So some of them said, yeah, we'll come up and support you. And so I just kind of sneak in about 5 minutes after it starts and go sit on the back row. And I gave everybody no time to get there. So they're no one's to the church at this point. And they ended up funneling in, and Elder Kyle McKay is the presiding authority that day. This is, this is 24 hours after she's passed away. And he stands up at the pulpit, and I'm just in the back, just, not thinking about anything. And he says, brothers and sisters, you were supposed to have a different general authority in this meeting, but it got changed about a month ago, and they asked me to come to this meeting. And he said, the Lord works in mysterious ways, but I'm telling you, he knows what's going on. And I'm here to talk to Jon Adams, which was really odd, right? Like sitting in the back, like, I don't know that he even knows I'm there, right? He doesn't know what I look like. And so he gave a great talk, but that wasn't the thing. He somebody came and invited me to come speak with him after. And so, those people that ended up coming, mostly Janelle's family got there, and my parents got there, and they invited us into to the high council room. If you know an LDS church, it's a big room with a big table, and Elder McKay comes in, and he, no pleasantries. We don't say hello. We don't say, he just comes in. And I promise you, Casey, the next hour, he one by one answered those questions I asked my dad that morning. One by one. Almost in order. I think there's one or two things were just not almost in order of what I had said to my dad, with some scripture and some things. And he explained to me in that meeting, he says, I don't know what it is about what I know about grief, but he said, I keep getting sent to different state conferences, and the week I get there, people pass away. He says, I don't know what it is, but for some reason it happens. And so when I got to the meeting, they told me there'd been a death in the stake. I knew that I was there to talk to you. Why else would there have been a change? And he and I we've made a great friendship since. But the let's call it the balm of Gilead that's referenced in the Bible. Like he showed up and just soothed my pain, right? And this doesn't happen for everybody, Casey, right? Like many people, don't feel God right after for a long, long time. I've got some thoughts of why, and I'll share those with you, of why it went down the way it went down. But within 24 hours, I have, what I believe is a servant of the Lord showing up to, bear my burdens. And gave me a blessing that night, and he blessed me with Janelle's feminine capabilities to care for those kids. And he said, you will have joy in the oddest of hours. You will have understanding of things that you don't know why you understand them, because you're going through this horrendous event. And I remember him saying that to me, thinking, joy? Like, I don't feel joy. I'll tell you, I don't feel joy right now. But like I mentioned before, for 34 years, I feel like I had a lot of hope that there was a God out there. But to just like look someone in the eye and say, I've got this, like, that was hard. Like I had a lot of hope and faith, and the ball always bounced my way. So it was really easy to say, oh yeah, this must be good, because everything seems to bounce my way,
Yeah.
And, but then for about 8 to 10 months, I'm telling you, and I think this is probably why he asked me on the podcast, but the next 8 to 10 months, like the heavens were open and there were so many things that just changed. And obviously the outpouring of love happens, and the outpouring of people there to help you, and you know who your people are, right? You know who your people are.
Yeah.
And my people showed up. They just showed up. 7 days later, I was working because I had my business partner's wife, who happened to be Janelle's best friend. They were best of friends. Would come on Mondays and Fridays. My sister-in-law, Courtney, would come on Tuesdays. I don't remember the exact schedule. And then Janelle's mom would come once to twice a week, and they'd split it up, and my mom would take an off day. And so I continued to kind of I'd go to work, and I couldn't do a whole lot. Dwight and Craig and our staff, who was just incredible, just
carried you.
They carried me. They put me on their back, and they just carried me. And along that way, just again, things started happening that I didn't have any experience with. Things that you read about in the scriptures, and you're like, well, that sounds kind of far-fetched, but okay. But just miracle after miracle after miracle in like a 10-month period. And then it kind of stopped after that. I feel kind of the same way that I felt before, and I've got a lot of hope. But for about 10 minutes or 10 months, it's a true belief for me, at least, that as deep as whatever you're dealing with, God gives commensurate help on the other side. You just have to choose to take a step towards the light, right? Like I could have taken a step the other way. I'm quite certain I wouldn't have my career. I'm quite certain I wouldn't have the little family I have now.
Yeah.
But, I could have ended up in a gutter somewhere for all I know, as bad as it hurt, But all I did was just kind of have some trust and turn to the light. And, like I mentioned, that song that really helped me in those 8 days, it kept propping up. Like, we played it at her funeral. I'd be having a bad day, and it'd be the opening hymn at church. And it was just like, oh, God's reminding me of that song. And fast forward about 6 months, and I'm having a real bad day. And I see that song. I'm just scrolling online, and I see that song there, and I click on it. And here's this new rendition of it. And the song's kind of changed. It's more upbeat, and it's a little happier. And it was instantaneous. All the bad feelings I had just went out of the room as this song started. And there's this woman singing that song. Well, it just changed my day. Like, the pain went away for the day, and I just had a great day. And I was telling everybody, hey, and everybody kind of knew that song was real important to me. And hey, that song showed up again. And so I ended up sending a message online to the singer. Said, hey, this song I played at my wife's funeral, it really helped me today. Thanks for doing music. You just so you know, you reached me, and I hope that you know that. And a couple of days later, she replied back that she's a Christian singer, LDS Christian singer, and she does it because she had lost her mom about 6 years before, and dedicates all of her music to her mom. And so we just had some talk on grief. And fast forward a couple of weeks, and I won't get too detailed into this, but telling you that the heavens were open, I don't dream ever, hardly. And I had this very vivid dream and vivid enough that I called my mother-in-law and my parents and my siblings and my sister-in-laws and said, hey, I had this dream. I have zero interest in dating anybody. Janelle's not been gone very long, but I had this dream, so I'm just telling you that I think God's calling me to do, like, something's going to happen. I don't understand it, but I want you to know so that, if I do start dating, it's not that I just decided one day. And that was a few weeks before this whole video experience. Well, I click on this singer-songwriter's Facebook, and the next video down, I click it, and it's the title of it is "What Not to Say to Divorced People at Church." And the same singer is just funny and cute and happy, and all of a sudden I said, "Oh, wait a second, that she's divorced." I didn't know she was single when I sent her this original, the original note.
Yeah.
And then I had a very distinct feeling again right here that there's something there. Fast forward a little bit, and we're on a date. Me and the singer of that song that was
Callie.
so important to me.
Yeah.
And her name at the time was Callie Reed. She was she'd had 7 or 8 records out. She was Shadow Mountain Records. She's a singer-songwriter that at the time she was performing with John By the Way and Brad Wilcox and Elaine Dalton. She headlined women's conference at BYU. I didn't know her.
You didn't know any of this stuff.
I didn't know who it was.
Yeah.
But we go on a date, and it just fit again. And go on another date and another. She tells me later that when I sent her that original message, my profile picture had me and my twin boys, and I got my arms around my twin boys. Maybe it didn't make me feel that great at the time, but she said, I didn't really think much of you. I saw those twin boys, and I had a feeling that those were my boys. And, fast forward a little bit, and we were married about 3 or 4 months later. We were married, and I truly feel that God just reached down on His timing and put us together. And there's just too many things to tell you about. But I called my mother-in-law and said, "Hey, it's going to be a really hard conversation, but I've been dating somebody for about a month, and her name's Callie Reed." And my mother-in-law just starts crying. And I'm feeling really bad, right? Like, she's just lost her daughter. Here I am telling her I'm dating somebody. And that's not why she was crying. She said, I know her. She said, Janelle sent me a song called She Put the Music in Me that Callie had written for her mom. She sent me that music video the Mother's Day before she passed away. And so my mother-in-law from day one became my biggest supporter in moving forward with dating and my family, and everybody just was so kind. And here they are grieving. This is still, within the year of Janelle passing away. And my mother-in-law was just so kind, such an angel. And the first time she met Callie, she had gone to Deseret Book and bought a clock. And on the clock it says, faith in God means faith in His timing. And she talks about this later. And she's written things because she writes for LDS Living and some magazines, and she's written a few books. And she talked about it later. and says, and I think she makes such a good point, that I think when we think about God's timing, we think waiting on the Lord, having patience, long suffer, longer. And she said, while we were dating, she was terrified, right? She's got one daughter, and she's now going to have 5 kids, because now at this point I've proposed to her, and she's terrified. And she looked up and saw that saying, faith in God means faith in his timing. And she had a very distinct thought that said, sometimes that means now. His timing it's not long suffering all the time. Sometimes it's now.
You gotta go.
You gotta go. And so we, like I said, I don't know how much to tell you about everything, but we started praying, like, okay, when should we get married? How's this going to look? We made up a few scenarios, and one was, at that time you had to wait a year to get sealed in the temple, which I thought was something that was important. They've since changed that in the LDS faith. You don't have to wait a year after you've been divorced to do that, or to get a cancellation of sealing. But we had the thought, well, we could get married civilly and just wait a year. And I didn't really like that. I wanted, at the time I didn't know what I thought. And long story short, we prayed about it, and we both got a very distinct feeling we need to get married civilly right away. And Callie actually made the joke. She said, okay, we looked at her calendar. She had so many concerts coming up being a singer. There was about 3 weeks later, there was one weekend that we could do it. And so we said, let's get married in 3 weeks. Like, go. We're having too many things of God just saying go.
Yeah.
And so Callie said, well, if he wants us to get married in the temple, he better do something special. And at that point, she had no cancellation of sealing, which, not all of your viewers are going to know what that means, but because she was married before, she had to get a cancellation. And usually those take about 6 months. Long story short, she turns it in, and 6 days later it shows up. And the date that we had chosen, we got married in the Bountiful Temple. And again, in that kind of 10-month swath, that I just feel like the heavens open, and God said, "This is my timing."
It's crazy,
and here it is, and there's just been so many things since. Callie, having lost her mom, has known how to succor these kids that have now lost their mom. Right? She knows, knows the pain of losing a parent, and this blended family. And it's not been, not everything's been perfect. As you know, you've got a blended family.
Of course.
And it's not been perfect, but it's been blessed, and it's been watched over, and it's not been easy. But I just feel like it's been right. And you know how they say, from the mouth of babes, great things are spoken.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like I said, I had no intention of sharing a few of these things, but I'm just at the moment thinking, I'll tell you this. I was talking to my oldest daughter. She was 8 when Janelle died, and she's 16 now. So she's had 8 years with each of them. And I was talking to her last year, and I just said, hey, we've been through a lot of stuff, haven't we? Together in your short life. And she said, yeah, we have. She's 15 at the time, Casey. And she says, but as I'm thinking about it, I didn't want my mom to die. But looking back, if she hadn't passed away, I wouldn't have my mom, Callie. I wouldn't have my new sister, Violet, that Callie brought with her. And then Callie and I had a daughter together, Ava. And she said, so for me to wish that mommy Janelle didn't die would mean that these 3 people aren't in my family. And I thought, the maturity level of that,
to be able to put it together,
of that 15-year-old. Again, none of this has been easy, but it's been blessed. It's been sanctified. There's been so much help.
Yeah.
Right. And, like I say, for a 15-year-old to teach me that is absolutely incredible. And so, that's a piece of, what my life's looked like over the last number of years. And there's obviously more to it, but,
talk to me about who showed up for you. I think this was a theme that we talked about, of just like people, and kind of endless people that just showed up in a big way. And
endless people
kind of showed up. You like physically needed them.
Yeah. I mean,
and also like surprises,
Yeah. If you think about it, across the street, we had a couple in the neighborhood, and, this just sweet human being started showing up to my house at 6:45 every morning to do my daughter's hair. Knowing that that's not a skill that I have. And for 6 or 8 months, every day, showed up to do my daughter's hair before school. Like I told you, my own mother, my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law Courtney, and my business partner's friend, or my business partner's wife, was just our dear friend.
Yeah.
They showed up and took care of my kids during the day, so I could try to keep the business going. Clients were so understanding. Months after it happened, just you know who your people are because they show up. And I've really got a motto now that if somebody dies close to me, I don't send a text. I don't call. I just get in my car and I go.
Yeah.
And I show up, and whatever I can do, whatever that means, I show up.
Yeah.
And there are probably too many people for me to take through all of it. But again, just a neighbor that every morning would get her daughters ready for school and show up to my house to do my daughter's hair. I mean, how amazing is that?
Because at this point, it was how many years ago?
It's been just over 7 years.
So talk to me about 7 years later, like post passing.
Yeah.
It's got to just be like the fog of war. Like you just kind of don't know which way is up. You're just trying to get through the day.
Right.
But you fast forward to now, and you kind of have life experience, and what would you say like are the lessons that you take from it? Like, what are kind of the gems that you say, hey, this is what I learned about myself, about others, kind of about even just about God, Like, what's kind of the truth that you say, hey, this will shape me forever?
Yeah. First off, I'd say when something like this happens, you want to put blame somewhere. And you can put that on God if you'd like, right? Or you can just give up your will and your heart and really say, mortality took Janelle. I don't think God took Janelle. Mortality took Janelle.
Yeah.
And had she not passed away, I think I'd continue to play a lot of golf, make a lot of money, and I'd have probably become the same person I was at 34. I'd have probably died that same person. But I think having tasted, some of the bitterness in life and truly been rescued, to this point, it's hard for me to want to talk about it.
I remember the first time I heard this story, and I'm just like, for all the reasons, it's inspiring. It's absolutely gut-wrenching. It's, it's just a story that's so unique. And I said, hey, we got to do a podcast on this. And you were just like, I don't know if I can.
Yeah.
I'm not ready.
I was not ready.
And it was actually interesting. You hit me up after we did one of these with David Butler.
Yeah.
And you hit me up after David Butler. And then you said, hey, I think I might be ready.
Yeah. David's a good friend of ours.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So Callie and David spoke they spoke together for probably 5 years on a tour.
Okay.
And so we know David well. And
I didn't. It was my first time ever meeting him.
He's incredible.
Just a kind of a beautiful soul.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
yeah.
You're going to find something else about David Butler right now, but this mass shooting in church that burned down in Michigan.
Yeah.
Did you see that there was a GoFundMe created to raise money for the wife and kids of the actual shooter? You know who started that GoFundMe?
I didn't know that.
David Butler.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but doesn't
surprise you, does
honestly,
it?
It doesn't surprise me. He's just you meet people,
mm-hmm.
and he was one of those people that I just met that he explained God and faith in a way that I'd felt for a long time, but had never kind of had the words to capture it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And there's things about faith that, have always just been, still are, that I think it's a lifelong journey for me that I'm kind of not one to just be like, okay, I'll just go along with whatever. Like,
right.
It's just not my
so
nature.
Hard. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
right.
so, he just explained some things in a way that's like, that's okay.
Uh-huh.
It's okay to just kind of go at your pace.
Go at your pace.
Yeah, but just keep going.
Yeah, and I think culturally, it's sometimes you think it's supposed to be 1 + 1 = 2, and then 2 + 2 = 4, and it's not.
Yeah,
and and I think God uses mortality and life's events to show Himself to us.
We had an experience. It's probably 2 weeks ago now, where we put in this sauna in our backyard. And cool little like setup. We love it. It's a nice little space. And ends up, has a malfunction in the heater and catches on fire.
Okay.
And I don't know if anybody who's experienced fire is like a unique thing because it's so destructive and it's so violent.
And so quick, right?
So quick and so violent. And, we got extremely lucky that it didn't burn down our house, but it was close. Like it, the soffit, the fascia, popping windows, like it, we were, 5 minutes away from having a house that burned down and not like an external sauna. But it was this kind of crazy thing where you feel this loss. You feel this kind of violation and a lack of fairness. And hey, this is unjust. And I don't want to compare you losing your spouse to a fire in the backyard, but there was a feeling of loss. And but when I went through that, when I'm kind of processing these emotions, remember I wake up the next morning and I'd gotten kind of this, habit and routine of waking up early, and I'd cold plunge and sauna and go through kind of morning goals. And it was like an important part of my morning. And I go out there and I get in the cold plunge and I'm looking at this skeleton, this kind of, corpse of this sauna. It's burned and the ashes. And it wasn't a negative feeling. It was a feeling of gratitude of everything that matters in my life, I have it. I have my faith. I've got my health. I've got my family. I've got my home. I've got friends who showed up.
Yeah.
I was thinking of like the friends that showed up, without being asked.
Yep.
And the fire department that came and served, and like, that I didn't know any of those guys. And you go through this process, and I just think, like you can't experience something until you experience it. Like what you're describing, like no one is going to know what you went through, but they all are going to experience loss at some point. And all of us, like Father Time's undefeated. Like, all of us, the time will come where mom and dad will pass away, or one of our kids will pass away, or a spouse, or one of us. And so it's, loss is so interesting, you know what I mean? And how you process it. And so talk to me about God. We've kind of had that theme the entire podcast. I think it's hard not to go to the afterlife.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about like somebody that you care about, and, central to faith is, continuing with the family and the people that you love. But talk to me about like, what did you learn about God through this process?
I mean, first off, as you can tell, I went from the assumptive he's there and sure hope he's there and I'll profess he's there to he's there.
Just the undeniable
experience. I never had something that to this point that I could like, say that I just can't deny it, but I just can't deny it. Right. Yeah. I've had experiences that I haven't mentioned to you that have just changed and shaped me. And, but also I think that it's the fact that we get to be parents puts us in this new perspective of understanding God, where we intrinsically want things to go the right way. We want it to be easy, right? Like, but then as you're raising kids, you can't just make everything easy for them because then what are they going to turn out to be?
Yeah.
Right. And so I think I've got an understanding of God that's a little bit of that way that says, because I want you to become something so much greater that you cannot yet see. I allow things to happen, and then I'm there to catch you. And I think the point of life is, I think about it differently, that, maybe that's the point. Not that if I do what I think God wants me to do, that my life will be easy. Flip that on its head and say, at some point, life's going to be hard.
Yeah.
And if I choose to let him in, it still won't be easy, but I will grow.
Yeah.
And maybe the whole point is that he'll be there to catch you. And it's really hard for him to catch you if everything's just going right.
Yeah.
The ball's always bouncing your way. It's really hard for us to humble ourselves to actually let him catch you.
Yeah.
But when life, and it doesn't have to be as big as losing a spouse, it can be, a potential loss. But there's so much pain, and we can, if we truly just flip it on its head and say, I'm kind of like your cold tub. Cold tubs are not fun to do.
Yeah.
Right. But you become more disciplined. You become more because of it. Trials, tragedies, mortality itself. I really just think those things are there to turn your focus to God.
Yeah.
And he'll reveal himself. And like I say, it was harder for me to let him reveal himself when things just go my way, because I think it's me that's doing it.
Of course.
Right? And so I think that's one thing. I do think, Callie, my now wife, who is just so incredible, I believe she was prepared to be these kids' moms. Like, I feel like there's knowledge that he has, that she had experiences growing up, that she can succor our kids in a way that I can't, and maybe Janelle couldn't have, because she had certain experiences.
Yeah.
And so, to just, I truly think that God is in all things. And, if you can't see his hand, look for his fingerprints.
Yeah.
That's something that Emily Freeman says a lot, David Butler's cohort in their podcast. Just look for his fingerprints. But it's real easy not to even be looking if life's going so.
Not even paying attention.
You're not paying attention. Life's great, And so, I think those are some of the things I learned, that he's there, and that, I truly just, I quake to think that I could have turned the other way.
Yeah.
Because my life would be a whole lot different if I didn't just turn and exercise some of that hope and some of that faith. And then truly what it's done too is, my circle probably was, like this. I had, I've got so many people in my life. They're all great, but my circle now is these kids,
very
my
tight.
wife. And so my priorities are definitely different.
Tighten them up.
Very tightened up. And, I'm still fumbling through life. It's still, there's still hard times. But the pattern that I've come to recognize and believe is, if I look up and accept whatever it is, like, I really think he will show himself to you.
Yeah.
It's harder for him to do that when things are just going your way.
Yeah. Brother, I love you. And I love kind of, your heart. Like you can feel it, and it's always been there. You know what I mean? Anybody who knows you is kind of known that's kind of the person you are. You lead with your heart. You love people. It's a family trait. Your brothers are all like that, and they're some of my favorite people. But I appreciate you having the courage and also even the inspiration to share. I just, these aren't easy things to share, and they're places that sometimes, like, it's not that fun to go, and but I do think there's people out there that, like, are suffering,
right.
and all of us experience loss at some level. And I just think there's lessons, the theme of this podcast is case studies.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, themes to this case or this life that you've lived, that there's evidence. And what I'm seeing from the outside is that people care, that life is happening for us. It's not happening to us, that there's something bigger at play. And if we'll pay attention, all of us in our life can see it.
Yep.
And also that, like, the darkest nights are completely necessary in our journey in life.
Yep.
And I think if you look back now, as hard as it is, like, you wouldn't pick any other life. Mm-hmm. Like, the life that you've lived, you just wouldn't be who you are without, like, these crazy dark nights. And I think everybody, when they go back to their own journey, in that hero's journey, they can see that sometimes the last thing that you would ever, like, you would pray that would never happen to you, is the exact thing that you needed to become the type of person that you needed.
Right. And
also to humble you enough to realize that you can't do it on your own.
Can't do it on your own.
I think all those things are like lessons that when I'm listening to your story, I go internal and I think about my own life and think about the people who show up for me, and even just God's grace.
Yeah.
Like, just this abundance of grace.
Yeah.
Like, it's like too much. It's like, you just feel, you're just like, man, this is over the top.
Yeah.
Like, I receive so much love from so many people, and it just feels so abundant, and it makes you want to show up for other people when they're hurting. That the last lesson that I think is so profound and so relevant and so actionable for me is, you don't call, you don't text, you show up, and you're there, and you just be there.
Yep.
And sometimes it's like, it's not even saying anything. It's just physically showing up and just being there and just kind of being available. So anyway, thanks, brother. This, so fun for me, and look forward to playing more golf and also following this journey of like this kind of beautiful life and family that you're building that's still in the early innings. And so it'd be fun to kind of continue to follow the story. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
This podcast is brought to you by Sandlot Partners.